Kathy. Thank you. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right. We're plodding through the 5 paths to Buddhahood, which describe the development of the mind. So again, this is not a sectarian thing. So for instance, say from Chinese Buddhism, Huineng, the 6th patriarch of Zen, often regarded to be a fully enlightened person, his development went through these 5 stages too, even though he probably never heard anything about Tantric Buddhism or particular practices like that. Again, what's special about the Tibetans is that they are the inheritors of the full range of Buddhist tradition and practices, teachings, as they were at the peak of their development in India 1,500 years after Buddha passed away. So it's very rich because it just has so many different techniques and methods, and this corresponds as being useful because human beings are so completely different. What works for someone, all of these things work. I mean, that's the tradition, not necessarily the tradition, but we can see in history how they've worked. Very unusual circumstances. You've had people in all sorts of life situations, and some which looked maybe very outrageous and some very conventional. But the good thing is that there's just, again, all these different methods. And that can be helpful. Someone with great faith, I think, kind of makes it through any method at all if they have that kind of confidence. But, of course, we're human beings. We don't. We have all sorts of doubts. This path is one of practicing with our doubts, sometimes going into the doubt, sometimes just letting the doubt just rest easily in your mind, and it will take care of itself. We can't think our way out of it, so to speak, and yet we've got our thinking mind doing all of its stuff. But we can have a deep kind of bone-deep kind of confidence that these methods have worked. And so powerful that even this is not just something of, absorbing a historical tradition and having a certain kind of belief or loyalty to it or something like that, but, this very lifetime. This is the great thing of some of these great masters, when you have experience with them, connection with them, contact with them, and then you hear the stories of their lives, fully human being, and yet something sort of beyond human at the same time, so completely human that they're free of the human limitations. So it's a remarkable thing. But nonetheless, we've been doing the 5 paths of Buddhahood. And we started with the path of, I always call it accumulation, and I think this text calls it preparation. Is that right? Let me go back to it. Yeah, accumulation, or they call it accumulation 2. And then the second path is the path of preparation, he calls it. I call it the path of application. I think it's been translated both ways. So the first path ends, the path of accumulation, ends with you having retained a certain kind of confidence, in this analysis of the body and the mind, and you see how so much of the stuff that we do that motivates us is based on really mistaken ideas that we can see with our ordinary mind, but applying it in a very incisive way, analytical way, looking within and then finding, these kinds of truths. So the first path ends with then the rapid accumulation of merit. where one devotes oneself to prostrations, to generosity, to various things, all done with this idea of the accumulation of merit. It's said to be three ways of coming to Buddhahood. One is the accumulation of merit. If you just continually to practice virtue, virtuous things, and more and more and more and more and more, when that cup is full, you might say, when the accumulation of merit is full, you're actually a Buddha. So there's that practice. Then there's the accumulation of wisdom, which is, you might say, in the second path. Same thing. If you're just completely abandoning evil again and again and again, this great path of purification, you would also end up as a Buddha. And then there's this direct transmission from the Lama's mind to the student's mind. All of these methods are there. And, of course, we can practice them all together. We don't have to just choose one or the other. But regardless, this first path, the path of accumulation, it ends with this tremendous accumulation of merit, and it leads to this question of emptiness, this investigation of emptiness, the investigation of wisdom and the nature of our mind. And then passing through the second path, the path of preparation, which is the insight in the start of the third path we discussed last time, the path of insight. So this is where there's a very profound breakthrough, and one becomes, you say, an Arya, a noble one, because there is this insight into the nature of things, the insight into reality itself. The definition of the third path is the actual understanding of truth, or shunyata, emptiness. Before attainment of the third path, shunyata is confused with one's impression or image of it. The difference is like that between recalling the face of a friend and actually seeing him. From the Guru's teaching on emptiness, one forms an impression of which is mistaken for emptiness itself. This is abandoned when emptiness is experienced directly. According to the Prasangika Madhyamika, all states of consciousness of ordinary beings, including their sensory consciousness, are deceptive, and this is due to their confusing truth with their conception of it. The Aryas, or those who have attained the path of insight, have two states of consciousness. They have non-deceptive understanding of emptiness, but a deceptive consciousness of the five senses as well as the instinctive kleshas. So, we're doing we did the third path, and just to briefly review it again, because it leads to, all right, so this path of insight. Tremendous amount of time is spent in the teachings on just this basic insight. So this is the first bhumi, it said. From here, there are like 10 levels, 10 grounds, 10 bhumis. But this third path, the path of insight, is about the first bhumi only. And then the next one, the path of meditation, is going up all those profound stages of a realization. All right, so again, on the third path, attaining the path of insight involves seeing the bare truth for the first time. And it is on this path that all intellectually formed kleshas, which arise from invalid reasoning, are eliminated. For example, when one sees a table, one automatically thinks that it exists independently. This tendency to see things as existing unto themselves is an inborn klesha, an inborn affliction. Believing by relying on reasons that it exists as such is an intellectually formed klesha. Upon attainment of the path of insight, one is freed forever from throwing karma, which is caused by self-grasping. After this, there is no chance of rebirth in any of the lower three realms. Since the force of throwing karma has been destroyed, one has control over one's future rebirth. So this unconscious process that's going on in our mind, this idea of a throwing karma, it means there's such a complete conviction of our delusion as being actually valid, as being true. You know, where it's like when anger takes you over, it's like complete prostration to anger. People, it just justifies. People say, why did you do that terrible thing? Well, I was just angry, as if that justifies it. But they're expressing a true fact, that the anger completely took them over. But with the realization of emptiness, this profound realization that he's talking about, anger loses its seemingly independent quality. You see the nature of the anger, and all of this is empty. Empty of what? Empty of that absolute 100% conviction, power. Instead, it's seen as dreamlike. And so already, even though the habit is still there of acting under the anger, not 100% convinced anymore. I can relate a story. Forgive me if you've heard this before, but I haven't told it for a while. But we had a member of the Dharma Center who was a psychiatrist, and he had been, coming around for about 6 months, and he was interested in the teachings on patience and anger, and the basic teachings too of all beings having been your mother. And he shared something with me after about 6 months, where he had a habit of talking to his mother on the phone, and it would happen, and it did happen this time, that for some reason he got triggered, and he was really angry, and he was shouting at his mother on the phone. And in the midst of his shouting, because it was going on, it suddenly occurred to him that he was trying to practice Buddhism, and he shouldn't be angry. He had the teachings on anger. And what struck him is that he still kept yelling. It still kept going on. The habit was so strong that he just kept yelling at his mother. But there was a difference, because it wasn't 100% anger anymore. There was this doubt in the reality of the anger, or this insight, this knowledge, because he had faith in, like, what the Dalai Lama teaches in anger. So he wasn't blindly committed anymore to his anger. It's a commitment that's beyond conscious commitment. It's like you said, it's an indwelling klesha. It just is there with us, and we're acting out of it, but it's completely unexamined. And so it was a very interesting experience for him, because he not only saw that his anger was, he saw himself trapped by his anger, colonized by his anger, and yet at the same time, he couldn't stop. He saw the power of this habit. So we can't just excuse things and sort of, dismiss them as saying, well, it's just a habit. It's very powerful because of all the repetitions we've done of it again and again and again. We're like, building a groove in which things will flow more easily. During this path, the 7 causes of enlightenment are attained. The Tibetan term for enlightenment, Jangchub, is a composite of 2 terms, meaning freedom from both kinds of kleshas and the ability to encompass all that is to be known within one's wisdom. These 7 characteristics are the exclusive attainment of Aryas, and are as follows. First, memory as a pure cause of enlightenment. This is the non-samsaric form of pure memory. One who attains it never forgets further goals or virtuous conduct. So that memory of the pure causes of enlightenment, it's like the mind has been penetrated, you might say, The mind now has this quality inherent. It's an inherent quality, but now it's risen to the level of awareness and consciousness, and so one never forgets. Basically, bodhicitta, the vow, the virtuous, and everything we're doing, it's always there. 2 is discriminating wisdom and direct, fresh understanding of non-self existence. Third cause of enlightenment that's attained, pure, enthusiastic perseverance. This perseverance is more intense than that of the earlier paths. And why? Because with the realization of emptiness, you understand, this is reality, this perseverance. You're on the right path. It's not just conceptual. I should be doing this. I'm convinced this is a good thing, so I'm going to do it. You've lost some of that split between the thought and the action. Rather, the mind stream is just, you might say unified, but completely naturally with this kind of persistence. A pure state of gladness. This is both a mental and physical happiness which one never experiences until the attainment of this path. The word pure, when applied to these terms, means non-samsaric. In other words, not motivated by ego and the grasping of ego anyway, grasping to ego. This whole world that we do where we're always trying to cling on to things which we think will either protect us or make us happier, and then push away the things that seem to threaten this alienated ego. So that's not there. So it's pure. And that which is samsaric is stained by self-grasping or the instincts of ignorance. For example, one goes to a magic show and is taken in by the illusion. One's reaction is samsaric. If you really believe, like a little kid watching a magic show, it's like totally true. But someone with more knowledge knows, well, the appearance looks like that, but can't be. Then pure ecstasy is the 5th. This is more intense than the ecstasy that results from the attainment of shamatha. So with shamatha, with the calming of the mind, there is an ecstasy because you're no longer struggling just to rest in your own mind. Instead, it's naturally there. So there's just kind of I don't know what to call it, but my old mind is forgetting all my good terms. But nonetheless, kind of an ecstasy. But it's a worldly kind of ecstasy. Whereas now with realization, again, it's pure. It's not fabricated. It's not conceptualized. It's just, it is. So it's stronger, you might say. And like it says, you can't go to lower rebirths, the same thing. This kind of understanding is not something that goes away. It's the realization of the mind. 6th is samadhi. So, in other words, this quality of one-pointedness, this resting in sama, in D, in wisdom, this resting in wisdom and the different levels that can be experienced, but nonetheless, the resting in wisdom is a cause of enlightenment. And finally, the 7th is a pure state of equanimity. During this state, one has relative freedom from obstacles. One of the signs of having attained this path is that one no longer experiences physical suffering. There is then no difficulty in giving away one's body or cutting off one's limbs if this would benefit other sentient beings. Now that gives you a sense of how completely profound this realization is. There are great figures in Buddhist history who are ascribed to have attained the first bhumi. This is, more than just sort of a tip of the tongue taste. Freedom from the following 5 states of fear is also attained. Fear of not obtaining food and clothing. They come naturally without effort. Fear of expressing thoughts to large groups of people. One receives direct teachings from the Buddhas and is able to establish close communication with other people. Fear of death. One is able to choose one's own time of death, for this is no longer governed by the force of karma or kleshas. Fear of birth in the three lower states. One has great confidence in the fact that all one's seeds for low rebirth have been destroyed. And then fear of teaching to the very learned. One does so with complete relaxation, confidence, and assurance of one's understanding of emptiness. Why? Because it's your inborn experience. It's not some concept that you're trying to clasp onto and then reiterate, or thinking you're going to make a mistake this way or that way. I mean, there's still great humility, but at the same time, when it comes to this, one knows, and one knows that one knows. On the path of insight, 110 qualities are attained. They include the ability to pass through concrete objects, to see 100 Buddhas at one time, and receive teachings from them, non-samsaric clairvoyance, and the ability to manifest oneself in 100 forms at once in order to help others. So again, extremely profound realization. All right, so that's the path of insight. And it's like this basic kind of certainly attainment, but also kind of incorporation of this profound truth and, the result of training the mind. And then importantly, the fourth is the path of meditation. So, the fourth path is the path of meditation. During this path, one develops greater acquaintance, which is gom. So meditation means to grow accustomed to. Gom, or he's saying here acquaintance. Gom. Meditation is becoming acquainted with your mind. And of course this works, this definition of meditation, of course, we're talking about the meditation growing acquainted, growing accustomed, developing further this profound insight. But it also works in the pre-realization. Because when you're meditating, you are growing accustomed to your mind as it is. This is one of the great difficulties for many people, is they see the agitation of their mind and it's uncomfortable. And they see the seemingly inability to focus. And so there's no peace in the mind. There's just constant arisings and attachment to those arisings. And of course, then we react to the arisings because our mind has glommed onto them. And it seems impossible because the mind is so fickle and the mind is so fluid and nothing to grasp onto. But in all of that, you are growing accustomed to your mind as it is. It's an extremely valuable and important. No longer are you going to fool yourself about it. You know. So when you see someone completely confused, you've experienced that confusion. And what does that mean? There's a oneness with those people. There's an understanding. That's true compassion. You have an understanding of that person through wisdom. And this is completely different than the, pity, looking down the nose at someone, which obviously implies kind of a higher kind of state, like I'm a better person than you. All of that stuff is gone. Instead, we have the raw experience of our own mind, good, bad, or ugly. And of course, what comes from that is knowledge, experience, wisdom even. The truth of the matter is that we're seeing our true nature, but as we see it in this confused way. And so there's, again, beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end. One develops greater acquaintance, gom, with emptiness. That's the path of meditation. The initial realization of it is like meeting a person for whom one has been waiting for a long time. Or as expressed in the long prayer to be reborn in Buddha Amitabha's Pure Land. So it's like a vulture being freed from a net. Thereafter, one needs to live with him. So person you've been waiting for a long time, finally meeting him. Thereafter, one needs to live with him and come to know him well in order to be fully benefited by him. There is much to be attained on this path, including almost all the bodhisattva stages. Only the first bodhisattva stage, or bhumi, is attained during the path of insight. The following are the essential definitions of the 5 Mahayana paths listed in order. So the first path, again, this path of accumulation, direct understanding of the Dharma. The second path, where emptiness is practiced, direct understanding of the profound meaning of the Dharma, as opposed to mere literal meaning. The third path, the path of insight, direct understanding of truth. Now the fourth path, post-meditational direct understanding of truth. So that means that, one meditates and one is in wisdom, you might say, but still in the earlier paths, there's meditation, then there's post-meditation. After meditation, we need sort of the discipline of meditation and all the internal forces working in the right direction. But after post-meditation, we practice compassion. So it's still like two things, wisdom and meditation, and profound compassion in our post-meditation. But in the fourth path, it's development of post-meditational direct understanding of truth. So whether you're meditating or not. And then the fifth path, the wisdom of the abandonment of both types of mental obstacles. This is not a characteristic of the Hinayana fifth path. So in the self-liberation tradition too, there are 5 paths too, but a little bit different. Okay, so by following the path of meditation, the fourth path, fulfillment of the eightfold path is attained. And this includes the following branches. We attain perfect view, or the wisdom arising from the realization of emptiness. Perfect view. We attain the intention of bodhisattvas to express their understanding to others. So specifically of shunyata, one develops the ability, the bodhisattva is able to directly express his or her understanding of emptiness to others. And you see this in a great teacher like Gar Rinpoche. You can have some sort of seemingly innocuous kind of interaction, and yet it can just be like I almost don't want to say anything, but because it misleads, but like a joke or just a glance or anything, and nothing dramatic that a Hollywood make a movie out of, but your own state of mind is you're getting this expression, his direct ability to express his understanding of emptiness to sentient beings. And something like that can be exceedingly, nothing you can write home about, but exceedingly inspirational in the sense of grounding you in your own mind and obviously deepening confidence. The ordinary person, you're not upset when someone says that the sun rises in the west, because your own experience, you know. And they may be crazy and they may be annoying and one thing or another, but it never results in a war because you know, and you know that you know. Third, the fulfillment of the Eightfold Path is attained, includes the following branches: perfect view, the intention of bodhisattvas to express understanding to others. Third, giving precise teachings on emptiness, presented in an orderly manner, free of contradictions. And as an ordinary layperson listening, you hear a geshe or a kempo, talking about, say in this case, the teachings on emptiness. There's a certain kind of rightness there, even though you may not know whatever. There's something. I've seen this like in the Dalai Lama gave some sort of meeting that he does, these public things he does. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was in Florida. Is it Florida International University? It's one of the newer universities way in southern Florida. I can't remember its name. But I saw a picture of him coming out, walking out down the aisle to the crowd, and he's surrounded by these happy people. And because we were fortunate enough, because I think they were so desperate for anybody who had any kind of connection to this to help, we were involved in the organization of Dalai Lama's visit to Buffalo. Was it 2004? I can't quite remember. I think so. And so I knew from the makeup sort of the crowd that was there. I mean, most people are not Buddhist. And yet you see these people completely happy around this man who had just given a talk walking out. It's just very, very moving because, again, it's touching something in ourselves that is basically, not touched. Not touched. And there's such a wonderful kind of, deep rapport, more than you have with your parents. I mean, it's remarkable. Okay. These branches are developed too. The fourth one is perfect physical action, including complete restraint from the 10 non-virtues. Then fifth is perfect livelihood, completely free of the following 5 wrong ways of acquiring things. And these 5 wrong ways for perfect livelihood, one is putting on an act in order to impress others and thereby gain something. Giving something in the hope of receiving more in return. Flattering in order to gain some desired object. Implying or hinting at a desire in the hope of its thereby being fulfilled. I don't quite know what that means. Using an invalid excuse in order to exploit others. So those things are gone. And 6, the effort to abandon all inborn kleshas. So again, the inborn kleshas are the result of us having practiced these gross emotional obscurations, gross emotional agitations, gross emotional kleshas for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. They leave kind of a residue because you can't do that without there being some sort of, remainder or taste or vibe or something like that. Again, the example of, the kleshas being a cloth, like a handkerchief, that's soaked in perfume and put in a box, a wooden box, and you take the gross kleshas out, you take the handkerchief out, the smell lingers. Those are the inborn kleshas, the wisdom jnanas. And then 7th, memory more highly developed than during the lower stages. 8th, the youth of samadhi for the attainment of the full clairvoyance of the Buddhas. With this attainment, one knows the thoughts of others as easily as seeing the reflection of a light shining on a mirror. The Buddhas never neglect to help those who are ripe, and their ability to know which beings can be helped is developed on this path. This is, obviously great insight, because how do you know when to act, when not to act? When is a person ripe? You can't really tell from outer comportment or even what people say. It's a remarkable thing, really remarkable and obviously deep realization to be like that mirror that sees that situation perfectly. Once the 2 types of mental obscuration, the emotional and the inborn, have been eliminated, they never return. Intellectually formed kleshas and inborn kleshas are called klesha varana. Instinctive mental obscuration, which is abandoned only by the fully enlightened ones, is called jnana varana. This may be like to the odor, of a mothball, which lingers on after the mothball has been removed. Only during the 8th bodhisattva bhumi does one begin to eliminate the instinctive mental obscurations. There are 2 kinds of bodhisattvas. The first completes all the Hinayana stages of development, then goes on to start from the beginning of the Mahayana practices. The second engages from the outset of their spiritual practice in the Mahayana paths, seeking the liberation of all. When the former attains just the first stage of the Mahayana path of accumulation, he is free of all coarse delusions, whereas the latter is not. So this is an important thing because it shows you the need for, non-sectarianism, non-kind of bias. Someone who, and we can't tell, but someone who's on the self-liberation path, up to the seventh level, seventh bodhisattva bhumi, can be more deeply realized than someone on the Mahayana path. So it's this interesting thing that, we try, it's said to be the more profound path, is to start right from the beginning with bodhicitta and the great motivation. But at the same time, you can't have a pride about that, really. Maybe a Vajra pride is fine, but it's like I'm told in Japan, I don't know if this is true, but this is from someone who lived in Japan in the early 1950s, that politicians would, claim to be Mahayanist as a way to promoting themselves up and when they were campaigning. But it has to be this kind of humility. Okay, the branches of the Noble Eightfold Path fall into the following four categories. First, the method of cutting the root of ignorance. First of the 8 branches is included here. Second, the method of imparting understanding to others. The second branch falls into this category. The method of bringing others to a strong conviction about the truth of the Dharma, thereby causing them to mold their lives into perfect examples of the teachings. The third, fourth, and fifth branches that I just read are included here. So the third, fourth, and fifth. Third is giving precise teachings. Fourth is perfect physical action. And 5 is perfect livelihood. All right, so these are the branches of the Noble Eightfold Path, fall into the following 4 categories. And then the fourth, the method of applying opponent powers to kleshas. The remaining branches, 6, 7, and 8, which is the effort to abandon all inborn kleshas, the memory more highly developed than during the lower stages, and the use of samadhi for the attainment of full clairvoyance of the Buddhas. All right. The 8 branches may also be divided into 3 trainings of the Buddha's teachings. There is no understanding of either the literal truth of the teachings or the truth apprehended through direct insight that is not included in the 3 trainings. The relationship between the 3 trainings is shown in the Wheel of the Chakra Kings, a common symbol for the Buddha's Dharma. The 4th and 5th branches are aspects of the training in moral discipline, symbolized by the hub of the wheel. The 8th branch is in the fulfillment of the training in concentration, represented by the rim of the wheel, meaning that it encloses all attention. The remaining branches are aspects of the training in wisdom, represented by the spikes protruding from the wheel, showing that it destroys all its opponents. The 8 branches are symbolized by the 8 spokes. So isn't that beautiful? You see that Dharma wheel often. But there it is, the ethical behavior is the hub, the concentration is the rim because it encloses all, and then the 8 spokes are aspects of training in wisdom, the Eightfold Path. All right, the first 4 of the 5 paths, so many numbers, are bodhisattva paths. The last is the path of the Buddhas. The first 2 paths are those of ordinary bodhisattvas. The next 2 are of the noble bodhisattva. That's the path of insight, path of meditation that we're on. One who follows these latter 2 paths has the understanding with which one attains enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. One's sole motivation is love and compassion for all sentient beings, and this is reinforced by the power of one's true understanding of emptiness. All the types of wisdom of the noble bodhisattvas, such as love and compassion, are not necessarily combined with true understanding of emptiness, but they are grasped by the power of this understanding. At the beginning of the first path of insight, one becomes a noble bodhisattva, and the first of the 10 bodhisattva bhumis or stages is attained. Okay, so those are the 5 paths. And that's a lot of information being thrown out. But, valuable. It gives you a sense of the path. And suddenly so many things become sensible. Like this path of accumulation, this path of using and understanding that there's kind of a power that comes from the accumulation of merit. And then the focus of that power then going inward on the mind. And what does that do? There can be, this breakthrough into profound experience, the truth of emptiness. And then, of course, abiding, growing accustomed to, in that realization, because it slowly, permeates, spreads, you might say, deeper and deeper, higher and higher, or however you want to say it. Next time we'll go through the 10 bhumis, because it's more developed there, the powers and the qualities that are developed. But the other thing that I've found is really good for this too, is that when one sees the sanity of this, and the fact that this has been taught, practiced certainly, but taught and analyzed and pounded, you can have confidence in it. And then one thing that happens is there's an immediate kind of opening and humility, because it's like hearing Garvin Rinpoche teach, no matter what level of arrogance you're at, you can't be 100% arrogant anymore, because you hear that and you immediately feel kind of humbled. That depth of experience, just that depth of knowledge. I mean, here's someone who's, didn't do all this study and yet is speaking in complete compliance is the wrong word, just in complete expression of these teachings, conceptual though they be. So then you start to have confidence that, well, I can rely on this, and it's good to have something to rely on. But it's not blind faith. We have to walk the path. We have to experience the truth of this. So that's the safety again and again and again. Because again, the teachings are the finger pointing at the moon. But we need to realize the moon. We need to see the moon first as a perfect reflection, and that gives us confidence. Oh, there really is a moon. And then finally, you might say you become the moon itself. You experience it itself. So all of that is very safe, because it's necessary to sort of, if you think about it, a questioning mind is an open mind. It's a mind that is shut, that has just come to some sort of conclusion and then just stays there. There's no more room. And yet what we fear, truly, is that kind of open mind. The whole world is trying to, shut down little corners here so no one has to deal with it anymore. And this is the challenge, because, it's very nice to not have to think. But we can't just say, it's throwing away the thinking mind, because it's happening all the time anyway. We have to work from where we're at. The genius of this, though, is that everything becomes practice. Everything becomes a tool. We're just rejecting the ignorance, really. The mistaken, invalid apprehensions. Instead of acting out of those, we're looking into them. Are they true? And eventually you're acting out of the truth and, developing your mind in a way that formerly we were just practicing our own stupidity, making it thicker and thicker and actually giving it power. So, Tibetan tradition of mental development. Those are he only did 4 paths. The 5th path is Buddhahood, the path of no more learning. We'll have to do that through going through the 10 bhumis. Okay, you've been very patient too, for this is heady kind of stuff, and so many categories and numbers and how they've broken it down. So I encourage people to read on it more, and it'll kind of makes a context. Okay, any questions? Anything from anybody today? Oh yeah, thank you. Okay.
Okay. Is there any visual aid to remember the five?
The five?
Yeah. Is there any visual that you comes to mind that helps you keep them in your mind?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question because no, I would, well, I don't know, but often in the elaborate visualizations, they're sort of power packed with everything. I mean, for instance, with say either Vajrakalaya or Yamataka, they got four legs, and you learn the meaning of the visualization. And then by learning that meaning, even by just doing the visualization but connecting with the conceptual meaning, it penetrates into you. So the four legs, for instance, are the four, what are they called, Steffi? The four my mind is going as I get older. The height of samsaric existence, love, compassion, the great joy, the four imperishables, no, four immeasurables, thank you. And then finally, the great equanimity. the four immeasurables, yeah. And so it's like that. And I would guess, I don't know that there's the five paths reflected anywhere in something. If there is, I haven't heard of it. Yeah. And in a way, you can kind of think that actually in any part of the mandala probably contains all five paths, because it's taking you from, I mean, if you're doing that visualization, for instance, that is by its own nature an accumulation of merit, and then with insight into the nature of, like, I don't know, one of the objects, or the deity's head, or the deity's body, or the moon disk that he or she is standing on, you're also getting insight into emptiness this way, and then the development to full Buddhahood. So yeah, maybe it's in each and every single thing. But as far as a one-to-one correspondence for like memory, I don't know. Kempo might know. We could ask him on a Sunday. Yep. Four immeasurables. Thank you. What's happened to my brain? Sure.
I was wondering, what is the ideal dharmic way to deal with politics and the upcoming election?
Mm-hmm.
Like, ideally.
Yeah. Well, ideally, the vast view, you see samsara revolving. And so, you do the best you can with the level of your understanding, but again, there's not any kind of belief that some political view is an absolute view. And so therefore you see the suffering of others, you see limited understandings, but you do it even a better view of history is helpful. Because I learned the other day, for instance, that, the Republic of Venice existed for like 450 years. I'd never heard of it. We tend to think in our own way. You see how we have our own conditioning. We're born here because we kind of fit with the conditioning that's here, and then it feeds into us more. And there's a natural kind of, there's a good side that you see the the good things that were done, the benefits that were done, the kind of proper aspects of government. But then, of course, what happens? It's like you see this in academia, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of arrogance. The two go together. So the basic problem is our own self-grasping. And it's a hard thing, but it's like seeing a child doesn't know. And one of the dangers is that people don't have realization. They don't even have the teachings that there is anything like realization. So they see everything through a lens of, basically their own kind of attachments. And so there's really not much problem with anything as long as you're not attached in the way that you're going to hate somebody for not sharing that attachment. That's the problem. That's really the problem. And things change. I mean, the world is impermanent. No system lasts forever. And yet it's not by a simple... We don't have any shortcuts, like just clinging to this or just pushing away this, and magically everything's going to be better. We're in samsara. The answer to samsara is the dharmic path. You see this painting, which is so beautiful, I love it, of Buddha Amitabha in his Pure Land, and you see a monk in samsara. It's actually in the classical representations of the wheel of life, the wheel of samsara. If you look, there's a monk in one of the 6 realms are portrayed, and here's the human realm, and there's a monk, and he's pointing, and there's a rainbow, very, very thin rainbow thread that's going up, 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 getting higher and higher the farther it goes, but going outside of samsara to Buddha Amitabha or Chenresig usually. But nonetheless, that's the thing. It's all completely out of this. I mean, it's neither accepting nor rejecting, and that's the difficulty. Because, you can see, and especially it's tricky, like, you discover the path, and you can be convinced that it's actually the right way. But how do you teach other people? By pushing it on them, they go in the other direction. By not saying anything to them, you have to find the middle way again and again and again. And that's our practice. It's one of falling down all the time. So with politics, it's very difficult because, for one thing, there is like a collective karma. There's only so much one can do. And in the end, the nature of samsara is the same. And sometimes what strikes me is how out of... You see a mouse? Yeah, I want to get one in here. The mouse, our dharmic mouse. I'm kind of interested in how things happen significantly that nobody predicts. I mean, it's kind of like the fall of the Soviet Union. We had 50 years or whatever it was of that being like the defining thing in our, certainly, foreign policy, but even in our domestic policy. Everybody was kind of united in a certain way. And it was like the CIA, all those wise guys, they never saw it was falling apart. In fact, they issued some report on how successful it was, just like 2 years before the whole thing fell apart. So there's kind of a humility that I think we need. We've seen it recently with COVID. I mean, we have all these talking heads and brilliant people. They can all make mistakes. But, we lose that. We want to hold on to something solid, We want some sort of complete satisfaction in samsara, something we can take refuge in, something that we can rely on. And yet at the same time, you do the best you can, because certain things do help people. Certain kinds of... It's like where there's a society with high trust, you don't need to have, a million clauses in the contract. I always get a kick out of going into McDonald's and you see I don't know if they still do, but they used to have this poster up with all their like ingredients and kind of like a big disclosure thing, as if they've shown you this so you can't complain anymore. The more things you have to have in a contract, the more certain something's going to go wrong. I mean, when there's trust with people and understanding, the culture's harmonious. Really a handshake does it, and people are motivated by their own internal kind of ethics and discipline to not be doing outrageous things. So it's a very difficult thing because when you say something to people, they sort of hear what they're programmed to hear in a way, or how their mind is stained. You can see this in psychological ways. I once had someone call me at midnight, and she was very upset about someone in the Dharma Center, and was just going on and on and on and on and on, and went on for like 2 hours. And what was interesting to me is that I would try to say something that I thought would be helpful, perhaps, but whatever I said would trigger something in her mind which wasn't necessarily on point. It just like, you'd say something and that would trigger some feeling she had about some deficiency she had when she was 13 years old or something, often running in the wrong direction. So people can't even hear what you say. And it's like they say, an enlightened person gives the right message with the wrong words, and an unenlightened person can give the wrong message with the right words. But certainly in politics, when you're dealing with so many people who are motivated by their kleshas, it's very tricky. So you have to do the best you can, and know when you can talk to someone else, know when you can't, and certainly, if there's actual compassion there, people feel that without us even trying to pretend or convince them that we're compassionate. They hear what they hear. It's not easy, though. It's very, very electric. And also, there's a funny thing about, people feel really good in a funny way when they let their anger fly. There's a certain kind of unity there. In a way, they feel the unity of the nature of it. And yet by just dropping your kind of thinking mind and just just going with it, it's like this temporary kind of transcendence. But of course, it's not completely transcendent. And the effect. So you think of the great discipline of thinking, not trying to just enrage people, just to express your view. It's tricky. You got to find the middle way.
I think it helps to take a long view on politics, and my favorite one is that democracy is the idea that the people know what they want, and politicians are bound to give it to them good and hard.
Yeah, really. There are just so many examples in our own lives of getting the opposite of what we want. We do something with big conviction and we get the opposite of it. You buy the car and you just think this is going to make me completely happy, and then the next week, some snot-nosed kid keys your car and the car becomes a source of suffering. It's just amazing. And then you get the insurance bill. It's like, I know, I'm sorry, it's fundamentally dissatisfactory, and to even have that thought. Someone told me a story, I think it was true, but they said that they were a story told to them by someone else, so I don't know if it's really true. But supposedly a man gets on a bus in Turkey in like the 1930s, 1940s, and if you've ever been on, like in the third world anywhere on a bus, you know it's like not like the Super Cruiser or Greyhound. At any rate. And he looked around, and there were chickens and kids and men and women, everyone, some people bickering, everybody talking, just this display of humanity, not at its best perhaps, or even just at its ordinariness. But there was one man sitting there who seemed, completely self-possessed, calm, happy, natural, peaceful. And so this person who was on some sort of a spiritual pilgrimage, picked him out and went up to him and said, you seem very happy? He said, yes. And he said, how do you do that? He says, I expect to be disappointed. But truly changes the attitude. These simple things, when we're united with Dharma, it's like I often say, just putting your hands together in the prayer gesture. It has a calming effect on the mind. It's just reality. This has been discovered over centuries. It's different than shaking your fist at someone. These things have an immediacy. It's cause and effect, but it's also more than that. It's just the inherent rightness of it, too. If it goes with the mind state, of course, there can be all levels of mind states with that. You can be a complete SOB and putting your hands in the prayer gesture. Meanwhile, you're tricking people, of course. But my point is that the Dharma works, and we just have to do it. We have to do it wholeheartedly and with understanding. Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you all. Let's do a short dedication. So there's this great commentary on the wisdom chapter of Shantideva is chapter 9. And there are two very highly regarded commentaries. One is Kenshin Kunzang Pelden. He was let's see if I get this right. He was either Mipam's teacher or a student of Mipam. Forgive me, I don't know. But nonetheless, his commentary on the wisdom chapter. And then the second one by Minyak Kunzang Sonam, who was a great Gelugpa teacher. And his commentary is called The Brilliant Torch. And just to read a little bit of this for our dedication. Apart from the realization of the nature of profound interdependence, this marvel which cuts short the pain of existence, sublime entrance to the road to peace, there is no other way to pull up the root of samsara, and neither any second gateway to peace. Therefore it is this path that should be established, striving through 100 methods and ways of reasoning. Accordingly, I shall here unravel the text of the wisdom chapter, which with numerous quotations and arguments clearly explains the middle way, profound and peaceful, free from concepts. I shall not express here any points not included in the perfect teachings of the learned beings, nor is this an elegant composition full of graceful and euphonious expression. However, to strengthen the imprint left on my mind from getting used to the profound meaning, and as it might help a few less intelligent people like me, with devotion and enthusiasm, I have summoned the courage to write this, so that the requests pressed on me by holy beings will not have been in vain. How fortunate and honored I am. May we absorb these teachings, may we apply them to the path, may we liberate all motherly sentient beings. Swaha. Okay. All right, so next week we'll do a little bit on the boomies. The boomies. And see you then.
Thanks for the help, Steph. And I'll look at the headphones if I ever get over this crud.
Thanks, Dave. No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you, everyone.